And thank you, thank you, thank you. So welcome everyone to an opportunity for us to get together. Can we call this pre-CS Ed Week? We know that CS Ed Week is coming up next week. So what a great opportunity to get things kicked off early and begin thinking about CS and ways we can come together to really show how CS is for all. So again, I'd like to formally introduce myself. My name's Omar Shepard. I have the honor of serving as a curriculum specialist in STEM and career education with the Orange County Department of Education. And outside of that, I do have the honor of serving as president of the Orange County Q Board of Directors and also done a lot of work in the computer science space. You know, admittedly, I wasn't originally a CS person. My entree into this was working as a director for the California Math and Science Grant when I had a chance to learn a little bit more about computational thinking and our work to create PBL units in math and science. When I discovered a little bit of work around code.org, had a chance to learn about the platform and become a code.org facilitator. And then from there, do some work around building STEM ecosystems. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, a STEM ecosystem, what's that? Well, we have to acknowledge that as an educator, we know our students learn both formally and informally. This is really thinking about the idea of what opportunities for STEM learning do our students have before school, during school, and after school? And how can we build partnerships to elevate an ecosystem of learning to support our students in their STEM learning throughout all of their different places and spaces? From there, I really am excited, and I hope you do it too, is take an opportunity to become a part of CSTA, the Computer Science Teacher Association. There are local chapters. I know we have one in Orange County, and if you go to the CSTA website, you'll be able to take a look at what opportunities they have there for you to build community and learn about resources in the CS space. Hey, listen to this. My name's Omar Shepard, and I am an ambassador for Girls Who Code. That's right. If you're looking for resources or ways to show girls how they have a place, a space in the CS community, Girls Who Code is a great resource because they offer lots of opportunities for coding, programming, and other challenges to engage your students both in person and remote. You're thinking to yourself, well, hey, it's not all about the girls. Well, I'll let you know Girls Who Code has resources for everyone, and it gives you a chance to be able to engage in programming in less than a traditional kind of way. Also, I have an honor of being a Raspberry Pi certified educator and leading a VEX IQ robotics competition with the Orange County Robotics Consortium. So thank you for joining us today, and I'm really excited to share with you as we begin our work. So let's take a moment though to pause and to consider what are the goals for today's session. Well, we're going to explore strategies to engage diverse learners in computer science. We're going to engage in a cultural affinity mapping activity to support building a more inclusive classroom environment. And then we'll spend some time with our friends from Skillstruck with an introduction to Python. Let's go ahead and dive in. So if you could, go ahead and type in the chat, what grade level are you working with? I see here we've got someone with the East Whittier School District. That's right, Katie there. Please share what grade level you're working with in the chat. Also, oh, hey, welcome, Ms. Crawford. I see we have someone else joined us now. We have Stacy Klein, one of our OCQ board members. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look here. So are you working with 6 to 8? Oh, higher ed. That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, CS is for all. All right. So when we think about this, though, I want us to think about the idea of building community in our CS classroom. And think about when we think about coding, who coding is for. I've got a wonderful video to share developed by our friends at Skillstruck. Let's take a look. Shout out to our friends at Skillstruck. What a great video. Thank you so much, friends. This is an excerpt, though, from the CS standards that have been developed. I say CS, computer science standards, and they're really developed from a national framework. Computer science is the study of computers and all the phenomena that arise around them. All right, I want us to take a moment to think about how our year has been going. I hear that we're teaching CS, we are teaching robotics, we're working in the science space. What might be some struggles that you're observing students have in your classroom? Feel free to type it in the chat if you want to take yourself off mute. It's just a few of us. Feel free to share. Let's go ahead and maybe give us some food for thought as we consider a poll. If you were evaluating your students and thinking about their approach toward their CS work, what percentage of your students in your classroom exhibit any CS anxiety?
Hmm.
Oh, wow. I have a comment here. Thank you so much for sharing, Stacy. I teach physical computing, and it is challenging to teach because I can't get the materials to my students. So I have to be creative. That's really, really true. That's really, really true. Uh, uh, Catherine Saucedo shares, holding students accountable to doing the work and monitoring their understanding. Ah, that definitely can be a challenge. You know, as we are evaluating these things, if you do have any ideas or things that you're currently doing to be creative or things that you're doing to find different ways of monitoring your students' understanding and their progress, please feel free to raise your hand and share. All right. Oh, wow. Thank you, Mr. Wakita. As Mr. Wakita evaluates his experience with his students in the classroom, he feels his students are pretty excited. He would say 0 to 20% are exhibiting any anxiety. Okay, thank you so much. I see an enjoyment from the challenge. Great, great, great. Well, what we're going to do right now is just take a moment to acknowledge that some of the times when we think about engaging learners in rigorous content around CS, we have to acknowledge that all of our students come to us from different places, different spaces. Often, when we think about our students in the classroom, they may not even have communicated before they got to that classroom, even though they may be on the same campus. There's a wonderful resource I came across that really has been foundational to thinking about ways we can engage our learners and support them in accessing their true intellective capacity. And that has been through this book here, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. One of the most interesting aspects of this book is when Zaretta Hammond offers up this idea that sometimes as educators, we can enter into a space of a pedagogy of poverty. I really found myself challenged by that. I said, a pedagogy of poverty, what do you mean? Well, really, it was this idea that sometimes as students embrace challenge, rather than finding ways to support them through additional scaffolding or providing additional supports, we will maybe spoon feed them the answers or water down the content. And this really gave an opportunity for me to think about times I may have done that, times when maybe I was uncomfortable with the awkward pause and then maybe revealed information that didn't really give them a chance to dig in and come up with new meaning. This text, I highly recommend you take a look at, whether you do it on Audible or read it directly. She talks about this concept of the lizard brain and how we must think about students and the ways in which humans learn or process information and things we might want to do in our classroom to establish structures to support our students in accessing their true intellective capacity. One of the outcomes of this book was this document here, the Ready for Rigor framework, that really goes through these quadrants that ask us to identify ways that we can understand levels of awareness, learning partnerships, information processing, and how a community of learners in a learning environment really comes together to support students as they learn. I'd like for us to take a moment. There are just a few of us here to click on the document. Go ahead and read through it. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on the timer here. And I want you to orient yourself with these quadrants. Orient yourself with the Ready for Rigor framework, a framework for culturally responsive teaching. We'll chat more after you have a moment to give it a gander. I'll mute myself. Actually, just a moment. I'm realizing I haven't shared the link to this presentation. Let me share the link. Just a moment, please. I'm going to hit escape here because I don't expect everyone to be able to see that on the screen. And I'm going to hit share really quick so I can get the link. Anyone with link can copy. Thank you, everyone. Just give me one moment thank you for your patience. Anyone with the link can view, copy. All right, I'm going to go in the chat right now. I'm going to drop a link to the presentation in the chat. Thank you for your patience. Okay, here we go. I just did that. And then now I'm going to drop a link to the Ready for Rigor framework so you don't have to try to find it. Just a moment, please. I'm going to drop that there, right click. I'm going to copy that. It's going in the chat, Control V. All right, I just pasted the Ready for Rigor framework in the chat. Go ahead and click on that. I'll go back into the present mode, and then I will hit the timer of 5 minutes to give us a chance to review. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, play. All right. All right, as you're having a moment to review this Ready for Rigor framework, what might be some thoughts that are coming to mind? Please unmute yourself and share.
One thing I've found over this summer, I had the unique opportunity to partner with Camp Common Ground, and they partner students with, students and adults, and you pair them up with people that are that are different than them, whether it be race or gender or whatnot. And it was really interesting to, you know, from Skillshock, we provide a lot of, you know, like code nights, little where they built their websites together, and they were learning things they haven't learned before. I'm looking through here, and it's kind of helping the one of the things says um, re- reduce the stress from stereotype, threat, and microaggressions.
Wow.
You know, a lot of these young girls of color, they would thought this is coding was something for their uncle in their basement, or you know, things that breaking down the barriers of what they think that they can accomplish.
Wow.
And that was really exciting to see. So yeah, thanks, Omar.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. Stacy Klein shares balancing rigor with access during pandemic teaching is a challenge. Our district is working very hard to ensure that students are not penalized during this time for incredible technological challenges. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh,
So we're
it's
gonna,
funny. Mark Wakita just posted, but he posted it to me instead of to the group. But it's funny that he mentioned Blizzard because that's exactly what I was just going to say, Mark. With my students, on one topic, our district has just raised the ceiling of Fs to 55% because they're adamant that the students the teachers have compassionate grading, and that students aren't penalized because they're having trouble with access. And we give them a Chromebook and a Wi-Fi hotspot, and in spite of all that, they still get dropped off Zoom and things like that. And so they're really trying to address all that. On another note, with regards to what Mark's going to post to the group, or I can repaste it, is I got to take my students to Blizzard last year as well. And he mentions that. And I took my students who were, if not the lowest 16 students in the school, it was in the lowest 25. My 16 were the lowest 25 in the school. And we did an hour of code at Blizzard, and Blizzard just pulled out all the stops. They took them on a tour. They treated them like royalty and treated them like adults. And then we did our hour of code. And in spite of all the shebang and all the snazzy stuff, and they each got a little toy model, the kids' favorite part was 1 hour with an engineer. There were men and women. There were, not all of them were engineers. Some of them were just the admin staff there, but everybody had a passion for gaming and coding and things like that. So it was either one child or two of my 8th graders who were paired up with an adult, and they had that adult for an hour, and they each addressed the hour of code challenge together. And it was mind blowing how meaningful that was for them. And some of my more like tougher boys that might be more rambunctious in class, where one of the engineers got him to go to the front of the group and present to all 50 people. And he said, I'm going to talk for him because he wants me to be his voice. So I will explain what we did together. And so even though just getting my student to go to the front of the room and do that, it was just like, I get chills because that engineer knew him for maybe half an hour and knew exactly what that child needed.
wow.
And so he presented their project together
Wow.
as if they were team, they were partners, and he was so proud. And so it's neat that Mark had mentioned that, and then that Jerome was talking about how important it is that these kids are matched up with other adults, and then that's the most meaningful thing of all.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
And
And I
that.
really, go ahead, Sherelle.
Oh, thank you. I was also listening to what she was saying, and one of the things that spoke to me was about the partnership and how it really makes a huge difference. And it was in one of the graphs, but you're saying it with the Stacy is saying that with a real life example, that it just confirms it's the relationship. And we have, in our current situation, finding the solutions, finding the answers for reimagining these relationships. We're taking it to a different level, but it's still that human contact, that just
That's right.
getting to know this child and what it is that has purpose and meaning, and
Yeah.
bringing that out. And so that's what spoke to me. That's what jumped out at me.
Wow. Wow. You know, something about what you just shared, Sherelle, I know we're not talking about this today, but that whole MTSS piece about knowing your name, your face, your story, and how when students are feeling that they are being seen, heard, and valued, that totally helps to elevate opportunities for them to learn and to be open to that learning. Absolutely. Well, part of what we're doing now, which is kind of doing a little skip through, there's no way that we're going to really understand the whole text, but one excerpt from it I think important to look at is looking at the one about awareness, where it talks about knowing your own cultural lens and understanding the three levels of culture. This was something that was actually very new for me when I came across this in the book. Here's a graphic that I think is pretty interesting that gives you some insight into these three levels of culture. And when you look at it, you'll notice that surface really is that talk style, that music, games, dance, literature. A lot of us are familiar with that one. But then the shallow culture I found pretty interesting. Personal space, concepts of time, tempo of work, how fast do you get things done? Nonverbal communication, eye contact. And then there's the deep levels of culture, which is really more around that concept of self and definition of family. It definitely was very interesting to me after being exposed to this and watching a show. I know I don't mean to talk about television, but there was a show I was watching where it was an Indian family and the gentleman went down on his knees and he rubbed the feet of his elders. And I thought, gee, why is he doing that? And it come to find out that was a way of demonstrating respect in that culture. I thought that was pretty fascinating. So I just think that as we began to think about our own levels of culture, right? Understanding our own cultural lens, and we begin to think about how can we support our students in understanding their own lens and the lens of others. That's part of what the grounding activity really is. I'm going to hit escape here. I do invite you guys to visit these resources in the presentation as shared, because the activity that we dive into really gives us a chance to understand a little bit more about, oh my goodness, my dog's going to pull my earbuds out. Sorry, get back, Charlie. Sorry. Is take a moment to understand more about how might we create an opportunity for an activity. This is a Freire modeled activity. Let's imagine it's the beginning of the year. We're getting students together. Maybe we're in a breakout room. Now, the plan was to put us all in breakout rooms, but there's just a few of us, so we're just going to walk through this together. And you'd have students respond to the prompt, right? What are you listening to? What are you watching? What ticks you off? What's up with the fam? Now, the idea is you would have students go to the slide number of the breakout room that they were in, right? They would begin to respond to those prompts. And then after responding to those prompts, they would talk about how they responded together in the group. And then they will be given an opportunity to then look at the responses of everyone else that has responded to that prompt. If you were looking at a previous iteration of this here, you would simply, click on that, and it would actually take you over to a place where we've done an iteration of this, where you'll have responses of this, right? So what are you listening to? In this example here is some different responses. What is being watched? What's up with the fam, right? Sometimes what happens is as students are going through the opportunity to review these responses, they realize, gee, I'm not the only one actually experiencing this or going through this. Or, hey, I didn't know about that music group. Tell me about it, right? An opportunity to build community in the space. And then give those students an opportunity to develop that sense of interconnectedness. Now, this is just one strategy that you might engage in the very beginning of the year as you're working to build that sense of community with your students. But inevitably, I'm sure we can agree, as we enter into that more rigorous CS content, inevitably having a greater sense of community, having that sense of interconnectedness can support our students as they seek to access their greatest levels of intellective capacity. So right now, though, I'm going to go ahead and pause. I really want to thank you all for joining us. We've got some friends, though, with us, really sharing some great resources from Skillstruck. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't hit escape here. There's a wonderful video that I came across, but I think I'll go ahead and transition right now. I'd like to introduce Jerem Sessions. He has been a great partner and collaborator working with Skillstruck, helping me learn more about their platform and how they're using it to teach kids Python. Also joining us is Alma Thurber with us, and one of their colleagues, Preston Wright. Jerem, please do share. You're on mute.
Every time I think I'm unmuted. Oh, going back and forth. Thanks everybody. Yeah, like you mentioned, my name's Jerem. I work with schools in California, helping them integrate more computer science courses. It's been, I love what Omar's been teaching. This is right down my alley. I've always wanted to learn more about this and broaden my perspective. So I definitely don't want to take too much time. I want to turn the time over to Alma, who's going to be leading our instruction. But before I do that, quickly, I want to show what we're going to be working in. With the time frame we have, we're going to be doing kind of a quick dive into to Python, learn a couple principles, maybe do a program or two. So it's going to be really exciting. We're going to be using the Skillshare platform. Alma's going to be posting a link here soon. That is going to be the link to the playground where you're going to sign in. I will explain that what we're going to be using for this little event to actually type the code is part one of 3 of Skillshare. So it's what's called Voyage, is the secondary platform where you have the HTML, CSS, Python, JavaScript, and Alma will walk a little bit through that on the left-hand side when you log in. But that's part 1. What I'm going through right here on the screen is we have the teacher resources. So Skillshare has full lesson plans that you can manage all the students' progress and see their code and their files all remotely, and be able to manage, really customize your entire alignment. And then we have the Launchpad, which is for the elementary space, and then the Voyage, which is more the secondary. And so today we're going to be using the Voyage as we get into Python, and I'm going to turn the time over to Alma here as he begins. So thank you everybody for following along. There we go. Awesome. Thanks. And,
awesome.
And one thing I want to say as well, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can throw it in the chat and Preston and I will be able to help you out.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah, this has been so great so far. This has been really awesome. So yeah, I posted the link in there, and it looks like Jorge posted a better link that you can just click on. You won't have to copy and paste. So thanks for doing that, Jorge. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys now. Okay, perfect. If you guys click on that link, it should take you to a page that looks like this. Let me close down the chat so that's not in my way. Basically, you can just fill out this information. Doesn't really matter. Your email here won't be used for anything in particular. But you can just do anything you want there. Select your language. I assume we all speak English. And then click submit. And you'll come to a page in here that will get you ready to start coding with us. And I'll go ahead and dive into this a little bit more. I'm actually logged in on another page. If I did that too fast, please let me know and I can slow down. But it should take you to a page that looks somewhat like this. Let me move your guys' pictures over here on my other screen so I have a little bit more room. Okay, perfect. So I don't know all of your guys' technical background. It sounds like a lot of you have some coding experience. And so part of this will be just introduction to Python as if you didn't know anything, but also just kind of showcasing our platform and how it helps students in their learning process. So let me just explain a little bit how this works. You guys were probably on a web development select course here on the left side. We're going to be in the Python one today. So I'll show you that. If you guys just go ahead and click down on that drop down arrow, you guys can go to the Python. And what you'll see here is you're going to see a bunch of different chapters. On the far left column, we're going to be using it as like kind of our textbook. That'll be interactive with some quizzes and stuff going through. And you can click on Python 1. We have a few different units here, but Python 1, and if you just click on introduction, we'll start there. And please, if any of you are lost, we're a small enough group, just feel free to unmute yourself. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And here, there's some introductory information. We obviously won't read it through word for word with you guys. And then here in the middle is where you'll actually do the coding. And then here on the far right, yours is probably black for now, or white, and mine is black. That'll switch, so it's similar in a second. But here in the middle is where you'll write the code, and here on the far right side is the console or the output of the programs that we'll be writing. Okay, so in order to get set up, I already have a file created, but I'll show you guys how to do that. Similar to any other Word document or just file on your computer, you can have multiple files here. I have a bunch because I've used this account a lot. But if you guys scroll down to the bottom, you guys can click on New File. And here you can name your file. So if I'll just call mine demo, for example. And then you'll want to select the file type to be .py, which is the file extension for Python. We also teach HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which are those first three. So if you just click py, then you'll have your first Python file that you can start working with. I already have one created, so I'm not going to click create file right here. Just going to click exit so I don't have duplicates with the same name. But now if I click save and run over here, I should start getting output over here. It's saying an error because I haven't written anything yet, so there's no code to run yet. But yeah, that's how it'll be working so far. Any questions? Have I lost anybody yet? Okay, I'm going to take silence as a good sign, and we'll keep going along. So Python, I could go on all day about what I love about Python, but Python is really great. One of the main reasons why is because it's very readable. It makes a lot of sense to people. So let's start with just our first iconic hello world. I'm going to write like this, and I'll explain as I'm typing this. So if we want to output text or have text show up here on this right side, what we want to do is type the word print, saying, okay, I want this to display. You'll do an open parentheses and then quotes on the inside and outside of whatever you want to say, and then a closing parentheses right there. So if I click save and run over here, I'm now going to get hello world. And every time I click run, that'll pop up again. So you'll see me reset the terminal, which will clear it out a lot, just so you kind of understand what's going on here. But yeah, if I click run, it'll just run this entire file that I've written so far. Okay, so not too bad. That's kind of how our different, how our program works so far. You'll also notice, I want to point this out at the beginning, each of our different, I guess this one doesn't, but these have like checkpoints here at the end. So as a student is learning through the curriculum, it'll ask them like, okay, this is a coding checkpoint. And so it'll ask them, okay, type out your first hello world. And then, it looks like I already did that. I'll click grading, and it should grade that I've been able to pass this section. So I've completed my first 10 points with SkillStrug. I won't do the other checkpoints just for time, but students, as they're walking through the curriculum, will be able to see that. They'll be able to see, okay, I need to complete this challenge. It'll read the file for them, and then it'll grade them. So a lot of it is automatic, which is really nice. And then I can just click this back arrow over here to go back to the lesson.
Sorry, Alma?
Yeah.
This may be jumping ahead. Is there a debug mode?
Maybe Jerem can speak a little bit more to that. No, I don't believe that there is much built out for that yet. Is that correct?
I guess explain what you mean by maybe a debug mode. If the code is wrong, our auto grader will give you a hint on what is wrong. And then throughout the quizzes, they have debugging questions and spots to fill in the debugged code per lesson.
Okay, so yeah, because what I did was I took out the close parenthesis to see what would happen when I ran it. And it gives me an error, which I expect, but it's a little cryptic for like a kid.
Yeah, it definitely is not 100%. So a lot of times they have questions they can ask the teacher or things like that, but we're definitely working on always making it better to give them a better hint.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and a great question too. So yeah, this is constantly being improved, which is really helpful. But yeah, there are some hints where we've tried to guess the common errors that people make, which are built into it. Okay, perfect. So let's dive into some more principles. I won't follow the curriculum here perfectly, but I will for the most part, but I'll probably jump around just a little bit, just so you guys can see kind of how we start with Python from ground zero. But let's go ahead and learn about variables. Again, I don't know exactly what your understanding is, so I'll just pretend you've never been taught variables before. I like to think of variables as a container, so a little piece of memory inside your computer that you can assign a value, or you can have it holds a bit of information for you. So if, for example, I wanted to create a variable that would remember the name of my pet, I might call that variable just pet, for example. And by typing the word pet, that's with no spaces in it, I'm saying, okay, I'm declaring a variable. I want you to hold some information for me. I'll go ahead and do equals, meaning not only am I declaring this variable, I want to put some information in it right away. And I'm going to put a word in it. I'll go ahead and say spot. And I can do save and run over here. And now this variable has been declared, or it's run. So now this program or this file is remembering this pet, and it's holding, or this variable, this container, and it's holding the word spot inside of it. Now, this isn't super useful yet. We didn't see anything else show up over here. It's because I haven't told it to output any information yet. So that's really simple, just the same way we've done it before. We can say print, and then instead of doing quotes around it this time, we're going to just go ahead and type the word pet right here. So it'll refer to this variable I've created. I'll reset the terminal just so we don't get confused. I'll do save and run. And we have this hello world that printed out the first time. I declared the word pet, or the word, the variable pet with the word spot in it. And instead of typing out pet itself, it typed out spot. So it was able to recognize that this was a variable because it didn't have parentheses around it. And it looked for what that variable was containing, what was inside that container. And then output that specifically. Okay, let's learn a little bit more about input and output. Variables are useful, especially when they can have different values that could be put into them. It would have been super easy for me to just output the word spot, but they're useful if we can let the user, the person interacting with the program, or some other data fill in that variable for us. And so we've already been working with output a little bit. This output is coming here to the side of the screen. Let's work with the input a little bit more. So we do that. Let's go ahead and say, instead of calling spot right here, declaring spot right there. Actually, yeah, we'll do it here. That still makes sense. Let's go ahead and say input instead of just assigning it a set value or hard coding that in. And I'll go ahead and say, what is the name of your pet? Right here. And similar to how we've done in the past, you're going to need quotes around the words that you want to be displayed. You're going to need parentheses, and you're going to need this keyword input. So similar to print, print is used for outputting the information in this case, and input is going to be how we get information from the user. And this is the prompt that they're going to see that'll fill in that space. So after it gets that information, it'll be assigned to pet, similar to how spot was. So I'll go ahead and do save and run right here. And now I'm going to get this pop-up box up here. It says, okay, what's the name of your pet? I'll go ahead and say spot. And similar to how it was before, I didn't reset the terminal, but it basically had the same effect. But if we type something else in there, that could be a name of a different pet. And so suddenly our program's more interactive and it can change with how people are doing things. Okay, I'm gonna assume everyone's doing okay if no one stops me. So please let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow too. I can speed up too if people are just super bored if I'm dragging my feet too slow. But let's go into this next principle, which is just concatenation, which is a really long word to describe something pretty simple, which is just combining variables with other text that we put in there. So we'll go ahead and say the name of your pet is pet right there. And I purposely made a mistake here, which some of you probably caught, but let's go ahead and run this and see what happens so far. So what's the name of your pet? We'll say spot again, click OK. And you'll notice, okay, so it still output hello world right here and then spot because I told it to do that. I didn't change that text. And then it says, okay, the name of your pet is spot. So the reason why I left that there is it's important to remember that it's not adding a plus sign here to concatenate information or add it together isn't going to automatically create space. So if I wanted to fix that, I can just put a space right there. Explaining concatenation a little bit, I know that I went over that a little bit fast. If you have this print here, similar to how we've done before, it's going to print all of the information inside of here. By adding this plus, it's saying I want you to display this information or this series of characters, this sentence that I've specified inside of these quotes. And then after that, adding, I want you to also display this pet. So this would also work if I did like that there instead. That would not be very useful, right? I could just put it in the same quotation marks instead of doing that. But if I did want to have a more interactive program, I could suddenly say, add that in there, which would concatenate it all together, which is really helpful. Okay, again, I'll try and click through this a little bit more. We'll skip over the checkpoints again, just for time. We just went over input and output, which is great. And let's go over syntax and comments a little bit more. So comments with any programming language are extremely important. Those of you who have helped kids program, I'm sure it's a high priority for you to help them have clean code. It's really, really important. Just in the industry, it's important to have clean code, but then also as the teacher trying to debug kids' code, you want them to have clean code, or else it'll save you a lot of time, right? If you can teach them good principles early on. So part of clean code is having good comments. So in Python, you create comments with a hashtag, and comments, to get in a little bit more information for us. Basically, they are words or programs that, yeah, just words that are going to be ignored by the computer when they're read. So if I could just say intro variables here, if I do save and run, this isn't going to affect the code at all. It's just going to be ignored. And they're just notes to us as humans, and the computer's not going to look at. So it's really useful if you have a really long program to visually separate things, or these are certain functions or certain parts of the program that do certain things. It's a lot easier if you have some comments there pointing out to yourself. Comments are also useful if you want to comment out code, or if you have a bit of code that you've written that maybe isn't perfect yet, or for whatever reason you want the program to ignore for a while you work on other code. You can just add hashtags to them and comment them out, meaning, okay, just tell the program to ignore them for a while, but you don't have to delete them or move them to another file or something like that, which is very useful. Okay, so now let's get down to talk about something a little bit different. So let's talk about variable types. So containers can hold different types of information. And Python, while it's great at a lot of good things, at a lot of things, one of the things that maybe isn't as clear is variable types. So I think it's really important to teach this well to students when they're learning Python as a first language. So we've already been working with one variable type, which would be called strings. Okay, so if I say name here, I'm declaring a new variable. And similar to how we declared a variable called pet, I can just say Alma. And we could do input to have information be put into that as well. But I've declared a string variable, which is just a words, and string comes from a string of characters, which will be put together. So that one's the first one, which you've already learned. You can also do numbers. So we can say age is 24. And this is unique because, one, it's numbers, so it's numeric values, but then also it doesn't have the quotes. So that's a really important distinction. If you put quotes around it, it's going to think it's a word. So that's important to remember. There's also a true false variable. So we'll just say awesome. Either I'm awesome or I'm not. And you can say true right there, or false, depending on how well you think, how awesome you think I am, right? And yeah, there you have a variable called awesome, and it'll either be true or false. We probably won't get into today how that's useful in programming, but there's a lot of situations why Boolean or true false variables are useful. And the last one we'll get into here, we'll say a float variable or a double, or basically a decimal point variable. So one common situation you could use this in is like a GPA. So we could say 4.0 or whatever decimal value is there. So again, with Python, the variable types are there, but if you notice, there isn't anything about the names of these variables that give away that this is holding a float, or this is holding a decimal, or a string, or a numeric value. So that is really important to keep in mind. I don't know if I explained this super well, so let me go back really quick. This is a string right here. I'm going to use comments just to show you what I mean. This is actually called an integer. I don't know if I said that, or an int, integer value. This one right here is Boolean. and this one is a float or a double. Those are used, I guess, for our purposes interchangeably. There are some distinct differences in some languages. But yeah, these are the four that we'll focus on. Some of the first that we introduce the kids to help them understand what's going on there. Any questions about that?
No?
Okay, sounds great. Okay, let's keep going then. So I want to make sure we have time to do a program. So I'm actually gonna skip ahead a little bit more. So I am actually going to comment out some of this stuff up top. If you guys want to keep it, that's totally fine. And I'll keep it up here on my screen in case you guys are still copying it. But I'm just going to comment out some of this input and output stuff just so we can focus on the later half of the program. If you guys want, you can also create a new file. So we're going to create like a different little project together. I'm going to reset the terminal. Okay, so one thing that students love is to teach them how they can build a program that's actually going to help them in their life. So one program that I like to teach them is, let's say they're in a geometry class, we can teach them to build a program that's going to help them with their geometry homework, which would be really nice, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create that for them. So the first thing we need to learn before we do that, though, is we're going to learn about if statements, which is basically conditional logic. If this scenario is true, I want you to do this. If not, then do something else. So how you create an if statement or if logic in Python, you just type the word if, okay? And then you're going to have some variable or some comparison. You're going to see if this statement is true or not. So let's create, sorry to be jumping all over the place here. I'm deviating from what exactly I was going to teach. But I'm going to create a new variable that says shape. And I'm going to say input, which shape are you working with? Okay. We're going to have them pick a shape and we're going to tell them the area or the volume of that shape. Okay. So just to make sure everything's working here like we're expecting it to, you save and run. And if I say triangle, click OK. I didn't have anything outputted, but that was assigned to the value shape. So hopefully everyone's still following. It's basically the same. It is the same logic as we did up here above. And I'll go ahead and keep this information here, even though I'm not going to be using it for now. I just want to make sure you guys can refer to it. I'll delete it once I need a little bit more space, but in case you guys are still copying, I'll keep it there. Okay, so let's go ahead and say if shape, and we're going to do double equals. I'll explain what that means in a second. Equals triangle. And then I'll do a closing quote here. And then I'll do a colon, and you'll see it indents there. Let me explain what this is doing so far before we continue. So with this if statement, I'm saying, okay, I want you to look at this variable called shape, which I've already been working with, and I want you to see what's inside of it. If what's inside of it matches triangle right here, then I want you to continue to do the following code. If not, I want you to skip over it. And so this is the important syntax. You just do a colon here, and then you'll notice that it forces us to be indented a little bit here. Basically, it's saying all of the indented code that's just inside of this if statement, I want you to do if it's true. And if not, I want you to skip over until the code is no longer indented. So let me show you a little bit more about what I mean. So let's say, for example, I have my width is equal to 2. We'll ask them what these values are in a second, but just for principle purposes, we'll explain this a little bit more. We'll do height is equal to, yeah, we'll do 2 again, I guess. And then we'll do area. So the area of this thing, of this triangle, is going to be width times height divided by 2. I guess I probably should have used base instead of width. Divided by 2 right there. Sorry if you guys were copying me. I'm going to change this to base. I think that's slightly more accurate for a triangle here. Okay, so just explaining this again, we have this if statement. If this is true, meaning if I'm working with a triangle, I want you to figure out what the base is, what the height is, and then I want you to calculate that into a new spot called area right here, which is just going to do base times height divided by 2, right? And then lastly, I want you to print area. So what did it finally calculate to, which is really nice. Shouldn't matter for these cases, but I'm going to do a 0.0. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So it's going to ask me, okay, what shape do we want to work with? I'm going to do triangle here. Go ahead and click OK. And so it did base times height divided by 2, which is 2 right there. I could type 3 right here, do the same thing, do a triangle, do OK, and that'll suddenly be, yeah, 6 divided by 2, which is 3 in this case. Hopefully this is making sense and I'm not going too fast. I did jump over a couple simple principles. Just let me know if you need to slow down. So this program still isn't going to be useful for the students or anyone writing it unless we make it a little bit more dynamic, right? If I write a program where I already know the base and the height of a triangle, it's not going to be very helpful, right? So what we really want to do is we want to ask them, what is the base and what's the height of this triangle that they're working with, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say input, just like how we did up top when they were asking the name of the pet. And I'm going to say, what is the base? Now, I'll explain this a little bit more in a second, but we went over variable types. And when we type input right here, if I typed like 2.0 into the pop-up window that shows up, what's going to happen is this is what's going. You don't have to type this. This is what's going to happen. So if I do 2.0 right here, it's going to think it's a word 2.0. So it's going to assume it's a string variable. So what we have to do is we have to convert it into a float so that we can work with it, because you can't do multiplication on a word or a division on a word, which is really important. So I'm going to go ahead and do base equals float, which is just casting or converting it to a different variable type, base. Let me explain what that's doing really quick. So right here, I'm asking them, okay, what number do you want to work with here? And then I want you to convert that into a decimal or a float variable type. And then I want you to reassign it to itself. So if this is confusing, think of this as, you don't need to type this, but if you wanted to do like, I don't know, name it something slightly different, right? Then suddenly you have this base, which is going to be holding the string variable. Then you have this integer base, or this float base. I should have done like an F base here, which is going to be holding a different variable type. You technically don't need to declare another one though. You can just go ahead and keep on with the same variable type, and that'll reassign it to itself. I won't show you this just because it's more in depth than we need to go, but you could actually combine these two statements and convert it as you're assigning it to base 2. But in order to help us understand, I'll just keep those in 2 lines. Let's do the same thing for height, and I'll explain I'll explain as I go again, just so I'm being thorough and not losing anybody. So I'll just say, what is the height? Let's spell height correctly though. Again, it's just input. It's that keyword. It's going to get information, parentheses, quotes with the prompt that you have for them, and then the closing quotes right there. And then that's going to be assigned to height. We're going to have the same issue though. We're going to want to convert it to be, there we go. Sorry, that was weird. And we're going to want to convert it to be a float as well. So we're going to go ahead and do float height, and that should convert it. That should help us work with it. So let's test this program and see if it works. Moment of truth, right? Okay, what shape are you working with? Let's do a triangle. And okay, what's the base? Let's say 2.0. What's the height? Say 3.0 again. Okay, and then so it told us, okay, so the area is 3.0, which is really nice, right? It's going to help us a lot. So now whatever shape that they're working with in geometry, they could have it spit out or output, sorry, spit out is probably not the best way to say it, but they can have it output the area to them, which would help them, right? Which would be really cool. There's another step we can take with if statements. I'll go ahead and write the else statement first. So I mentioned that if the shape we're working with is triangle, all of this code here is going to run. If it's not triangle, so if it's a square or if it's even triangle spelled wrong, it's not going to run this code and it'll skip over it. And we can have an else statement that is kind of like a catch-all. Like if it wasn't that, then go ahead and run this down here. So I'm going to go ahead and write an else statement, which is just else, no condition afterwards or anything, colon, hit enter, and it'll ask you to tab in again. And we'll go ahead and say print, I don't know that shape, because we haven't taught it to it yet. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do save and run, and we'll check that code a little bit. So now if I do a cone, like if I wanted to find the volume of cone, do a clay, and it says, oh, I don't know that shape. Oh, I didn't need to add a question mark. I guess it kind of makes sense, but yeah, there you go. So it'll have that else statement there. Okay, so just to drive this home a little bit more, there's one other step you can add to an if statement, which is an else if. And in Python, it's just elif, E-L-I-F. So basically, if I wanted this if statement to check not only for triangles, but also squares and cones and any number of shapes that I've been working with so far, I can add that to the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do elif, and like the if statement, I need to add a condition to it. I'm going to go ahead and say shape is equal to square, and then a colon right here. I don't remember if I skipped over this. I think I did. The single equals is an assignment. So like right here, a value is being assigned to this variable age. Double equals is comparison. So that is an important distinction. So if statements are going to have double equals in them 99.9% of the time, at least for our purposes, and because they're just going to want to compare information. So it's going to result in like true or false. This is going to happen or it's not. So diving into this just a little bit more, we can go ahead and use a lot of the same code that we used above. We'll go ahead and do width this time instead of base, and we'll do input. What is the width of your square that you're trying to figure out? I guess if it's a square, we'd only need the width, right? So we wouldn't need anything else. Width equals float, because we want to convert it to be a double or a decimal or float again. And we'll type in width, so it gets converted. So it's going to convert it and reassign it to itself, so it changes the variable type. And then we'll declare area, and we'll go ahead and do width times width. Another thing I breezed over, sorry again, is just I didn't really explain the math symbols. Math, if you haven't figured it out by now, or multiplication is done with this asterisk symbol, and division is done with a divide. And add and division exactly what you'd think they'd be, just add and minus. So there we go. So you just have the width times the width, which could help us get the area of this thing, of the square. So we'll go ahead and do print and do area again. All right, let's test this program. All right, so what shape are you working with? Let's do a square this time. One thing to note is you do need to make sure you're capitalizing the same way, or else it's not going to work. Let's do the width is 2.0 to OK, and it's going to be 4.0 again. I can go ahead and run it again, do a triangle, make sure it's working. A 2.5 and 3.5, just to give ourselves harder numbers. And look, that's it. That's the area of that triangle, which is great. Last time, if I do some other shape that doesn't exist, I don't know that shape. So here we have a program where the students can start to do something that they can at least see, which is more useful, right? And I love being able to connect coding to other things that they're learning. You can even do if statements to like American history or different things like that, which are really useful, right? Because coding really can be in all parts of their lives. Yeah, are there any questions at this point? I know I kind of breezed over some math stuff and things, and we went over some things fairly quickly. Is everyone doing okay? Are there any questions?
Wow, this is pretty exciting. I'm really humbled for the opportunity to learn alongside and to see how this platform can be used to engage learners. And I guess one question is, if someone wants to learn more about how they can bring Skillstruck to their students, what would they need to do?
Jerem, you want to take that one?
Yeah, great question, Omar. I'll put my email in this chat here. But as well, with this being recorded, if you're able to send this recording out afterwards and include my email along with that, I'm more than willing to send them a teacher demo account. So what I showed before, where it has the lesson plans and everything available, I can give them access to all of that to let them play around with it and even try out some of the quizzes and challenges and games and everything like that. And then we could talk about what it could look like in your school. What's really cool right now is we have an equity in computer science matching grant going on to help schools with the extra resources needed to get some rigorous, like this talked about, rigorous comprehensive computer science education. So yeah, thank you, Alma, for your time. And I hope everyone was able to learn something a little new. If you are a Python genius mastermind, I still hope that you're able to learn something new for your students, maybe a new program to do with them. And then again, let us know if you have any questions in the meantime, and I'm more than happy to give you that demo account.
Well, hey, thank you, Jerem, Alma. Thank you, Jorge, for all of your leadership and support. And thank you, Catherine, Preston, and Sherelle, everyone for joining us. I want to wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Hey there, are there any other questions or anything before we wrapped up? All right, well, we will be posting this up on our website or on our YouTube channel, and be sure to check that out. And then thank you very much. I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening, a happy holiday, and happy CS Ed Week next week. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you, guys.
Great, it's great to meet you. Take care.
Nice meeting you too. Talk to you soon.
Thanks
Okay.
for coming, everybody.